Hello and welcome back to another video on the second channel. Today we get to talk about my favorite set of all time, Stormfront. Unlike my video on Black and White, I don't have the complete Stormfront set, but I've reached a point in which I'm happy with my completion, other than the fact that I'll be buying more reverse hollows over time for the set. Here's my Stormfront binder that I decided to put this in. I picked this up about 6 years ago at a card shop. They had this binder and the Legends Awakened binder. Just sitting on their thing for like 20 bucks each, which is about a reasonable price for the binder. Even nowadays, you see them listed sealed. You can find these for 20 bucks if you're patient enough, which this is what actually started me on my journey of collecting binders, because I probably wouldn't have bought the binders if they were like any just, you know, random set, but Stormfront and Legends Awakened are two of the greatest sets of all time, so I did end up picking them up. Right here we have Gyarados, which is one of the Pokemon that's on the theme deck, and we have Tyranitar, which is the other theme deck. I will show off one of those theme decks right now, in fact, since I have it. Here is one of the theme decks sealed, which is the Tyranitar theme deck. This is Dark Rampage, Tyranitar being one of the coolest cards in the set, also a viable card in the TCG upon its release, a pretty decent, powerful attacker. Unfortunately, I do not have the Gyarados deck. I did see the Gyarados deck for sale when I went to the Milwaukee Regional Championships. Full Grip Games had it for sale. But unfortunately, the problem is that Full Grip Games, being there, just had a really hard time. Like, I wouldn't be able to like transport it home because it's there at the Milwaukee Regional, like I have a backpack with. But these theme decks, if you can tell, have very thin plastic on the outside. They're not sturdy. They're not meant to be touched. Very, very thin plastic that can easily tear. I didn't want to buy the theme deck and then have it tear open. These theme decks are pretty awful, as all theme decks are back then. But the fact that this deck comes with Tyranitar in there, you get Tyranitar and Straptor and Skuntank. Skuntank and Straptor are just okay. Tyranitar is pretty good, and the Gyarados theme deck gives you Gyarados, which is a proper, very powerful card. Here's the holo version of Tyranitar that's exclusive to the theme deck. There's a non-holo in the set. I'd also like to get a reverse eventually. That's the version I do not have yet. But it's a very nice card. I'll be repurposing this into a DP Cities meta deck at some point. And here is the Gyarados theme deck promo. It's a little harder to see the holographic, but it is there. This is one of my favorite cards of all time, this Gyarados. I have very many fond memories with it. When I was younger, this was one of the first cards I traded for on the playground because I saw it had 3 attacks, and I thought that was awesome. It had so much text on it. It's this crazy looking artwork of Gyarados. Just a fantastic card, and having a theme deck holo print that you can use in your competitive decks to bling out your Gyarados deck is just so cool. Maybe someday I'll get a Gyarados deck that has reverse holos in it, but for now I'm just so attached to the theme deck reverse holo that I always use these in my decks when I can. That Gyarados I did trade for on the playground, I had that for so many years, but eventually I traded it away, or I sent it to Celio's Network as a gift. So I hope he's doing well with that. He does like playing his DPP block, in which Gyarados is a pretty good deck there. As well as, of course, Gyarados is very good in 2010, which is where that Gyarados comes from. The Stormfront set was released November 2008, November 5th on the exact, and it's the last set of Diamond and Pearl. After Stormfront, you would get the Platinum series of sets, which obviously look very similar to the Diamond and Pearl cards, still feature the level X mechanic. However, Platinum would introduce the SP mechanic as well as the Arceus mechanics, kind of giving it its own flavor. Though many of the things that were happening in Diamond and Pearl already, such as the shiny reprints, or the shiny Pokemon that we'll talk about, and the reprints, which this set does have, would carry on into Platinum. Very much the pace of the Diamond and Pearl era would be set by Legends Awakened, and every set thereafter is going to aggressively keep up with that pace by printing more and more bombastic sets. However, none were as crazy as Stormfront, which is, in my opinion, again, the greatest set of all time in terms of English Pokemon sets. Let's take a look at the first page. Well, first, you'll see on the screen right now the 4 booster pack artworks. You saw the 2 theme deck artworks. Booster packs are Infernape, Regigigas, Torterra, and Dusknoir. I had an Infernape pack sealed in my collection. I opened it. I'll talk about what I pulled later, but it wasn't very good. Of course, I opened the set back when it came out as well, since I started collecting in 2008. Here we have our first page here. During the Diamond and Pearl era, before Black and White, at least, with every set before Black and White, the sets were organized by rarity, and then trainer cards, and at the end you had the big hits, and then the secret rares. So the sets always start with a just full page of non-holos, which in my opinion is pretty cool. I understand people who like the types and the evolutions being together, especially the evolutions being together feels pretty cool. However, there's also something to be said about how cool a page this is. Some of these are just the coolest cards ever, some of the coolest artwork, some very playable cards, and you just get hit with all of this at once. And it gets even crazier when we turn the page and get to see two sides of this binder. I'm just going to move this up just a little bit there. I know the glare is not the best, which I might try to see if I can just move my box over. That way I can potentially shut off a little bit of that glare. Still have my live stream set up from doing that. So this should help a little bit of the glare just by putting the box here. Cool. That will do enough. So right here we have 9 holos. Magnezone is my favorite of these cards since it is a very decent deck in 2009 and 2010, and in course in 2008 Cities, which was the format when the set released. 2008 Cities being Diamond and Pearl to Stormfront, so a rotated format with the old Diamond and Pearl cards, and a very chaotic format, kind of off the rails compared to 2010, 2009, which focused on like SP power sprays and power locks from Gardevoir, things like that that slow your opponent down. With Spiritom's Trainer Lock, you slow your opponent down. In this format, there's not really much slowing your opponents down from just getting a stage 2 onto the board turn 1. Very bombastic format, and I'm going to work on building 6 decks for that, just because I love these cards so much. Getting to play with them is awesome. Some of these cards are definitely better than others, despite the fact that this set did an awesome job trying to make so many cards playable. Some of them, of course, kind of just stinkers. One of the things that they did to make these cards playable is that many of these Pokemon have alternate typings compared to their normal prints. So you'll see up in the corner here we have Infernape, which is a fighting type, which I actually have an alternate print of over here that I can show a little closer. There we are. Infernape being a fighting type, obviously is its secondary type in the video games. Also a very, very cool artwork by Mitsuhiro Arita. And it's just his alternate type. He is... he's been printed again as a fighting type because Ultra Prism and Forbidden Light did a similar gimmick where they type changed the Pokemon from Sinnoh. So Empoleon, Torterra, and Infernape all boasting alternate types, but many Pokemon in the set are boasting alternate types that you wouldn't be used to seeing them in. Or you're just Magnezone and they print both of your types in the same set because you are just that guy and you can do that. One of these Magnezone, the Lightning one, is very good due to Super Conductivity being a good energy acceleration ability, Gyro Ball being a decent hit and run attack. This Magnezone, on the other hand, I think they probably thought it was going to be good, being that it is a Magnezone that finds your other Lightning and Metal Pokemon, but both of its attacks are just very, very underwhelming. Speed Shot sniping 30 is just bad, and Crush Volt doing 80 is just kind of underwhelming. There's really nothing that you're building around with this guy. 80 and having to discard an energy is not very good. When we would get Magnezone later on in the Platinum series that would be able to do 120 while discarding 2 energy, and it's better to just do more damage and discard more energy in this case, if it means scoring a knockout versus just hitting for 80 and having to lose energy as well. This Raichu here is special to me because this was the second to last card I was missing from the set. I was missing 2 cards from the set for quite a while. Spare 3 certain cards that we'll talk about at the end. And I picked up the Raichu at a card show for $2 last weekend. A guy just had a ton of Diamond and Pearl cards, which I'll show on the screen right now. So to pick them up for anywhere from like $1 to $4 a piece, I was very, very happy. A lot of these are my favorite cards of all time, such as Holo Regigigas. This is one of my favorite artworks And one of the coolest cards of all time is this Dusknoir, which has another one of my favorite artworks of all time. If I rank my top 10 favorite card arts, this Dusknoir is there somewhere. And this Dusknoir just has just all of the coolest things about Stormfront on one card. Great artwork, being that we're out of this, we're getting out of the era of Diamond and Pearl where most of the artworks are CG. Early Diamond and Pearl really struggled with a lot of stock artworks and a lot of CG artworks, all the way up to Legends of the Awakened, and in this set, the artwork is just much, much better. Overall, mostly illustrated artwork, and it looks great. The other thing that you'll notice about many of these cards, if you play DP, you might not really think much of it, but nowadays you may have noticed that most of these cards have 3 attributes, and this is a very common thing during the Platinum series and late Diamond and Pearl series, where these Pokemon get 3 attributes on their card, and then they can even level up into a level X to get more. Stormfront is, in my estimates, the set with the most Pokemon with 3 attributes, and it has the most fully evolved, like, Pokemon. And even some of the, like, just random commons and uncommons get 3 attributes, which really gives a lot of flavor to these cards. They were really pushing the limits of what card design could do, even if they weren't, like, adding new mechanics, per se, in the way that, like, Imprison and Shockwave during the EX era was, like, a new mechanic. The cards in the set push the bounds of the design of how much you can fit on one card. In the case of this Dusknoir, it's quite the essay. So, fantastic first page. Going into the second page, we have just an all-star lineup of some of the best competitive cards of all time. Starting off, we have Sceptile. Actually, wait, I forgot to show my alternate prints. We're gonna go back for just one moment, just to show reverse holo prints of these guys. I wouldn't forgive myself if I didn't show them. I do have them. Some of my cards are in decks, which is why I have not taken them out for the video. That would just be more damage on the card, unnecessary sleeving causing. I'll just show them on camera as they come up. As we get to our second page, we have a full spread here of just really, really cool cards. Again, some of these cards like Drapion were not that good, but the fact that it has 3 attributes gave it a much better chance to be good than just having 2 attacks on the Drapion, right? A lot of these cards have very interesting effects, even if they're not that good. A lot of people were testing cards, even like Rose Raid, that were not that good. They could do something. You can make these cards do some work in your decks. Rose Raid is a pretty cool card that I remember seeing in a deck that someone was playing to 2008 Cities. This is a pretty damaged copy that I have extra here, but Rose Raid has an attack that's essentially like Crushing Hammer. You do 30 snipe, and then you flip a coin if heads, discard an energy attached to that Pokemon. Remember when I said that Magnezone's 30 snipe was bad? Well, this 30 snipe is also bad, but at least it's got like a good side effect. And then if you attack this Rose Raid, you get poisoned, and its second attack is very expensive, but if your opponent's Pokemon's already poisoned, then they take 30 more damage. So, or is it 30 or 20? It's 30 more. So, essentially, they'll have 90 damage after your turn, 100 going into their turn. It's going to knock out most Pokemon. Mainly the energy denial attack is like the build around there, but unfortunately there's a lot of ways to recur energy with Night Maintenance in format, which shuffles 3 of any combination of Pokemon energy back into the deck. And there's also Unknown G to block your opponent's effects of attacks, and a lot of these cards are really hurt by Unknown G when they're trying to just lay effects down on the opponent. We do have an alternate print of the Sceptile right here, which is a pretty cool card. Got that classic Energy Trans ability all the way from base set Venusaur, allowing you to move your grass energy around your board. And it's got 2 attacks. The attacks are very expensive on this Sceptile, but it's worth reminding that there is a Sceptile from Great Encounters that lets you double your grass energy attached to your grass Pokemon. So you can attach 2 grass energy to Sceptile and use that Slice Drain attack, very creatively named, for 60 and heal 20, which is actually pretty good. Sceptile did not see that much play. However, when the set came out, there was some buzz around Torterra Sceptile, which had done okay at 2008 US Nats in the pre-rotation format. Because you get the new Torterra and the new Sceptile in the set, I believe there was, from articles I was reading, people were playing Torterra Sceptile as cities. I don't know if the deck's actually that good. It might be a little too slow. We're one set off of the really good Torterra coming out, and by the time that Torterra comes out, there's SP and things get complicated. But it was definitely on the minds of players, it seems. This Torterra is one of my favorite artworks of all time as well. Also a very cool card. Sunshine Song allows you to evolve your grass and fighting Pokemon in play. Or sorry, just your grass Pokemon. When you evolve into this Torterra, you can go search your deck for grass Pokemon and evolve from your grass Pokemon. This card is played in the Flyterra deck, that top 32 2010 Worlds. A lot of people are cutting this Torterra out of their deck because they do not realize how much value this card has in one slot. On its own, it's not that fantastic of a card because it's just a guy who hits for 60 damage while forcing the opponent to switch and taking a bit of recoil, but when you realize its counter as both a Luxray counter, as a way to just put early aggro on decks while not taking prize cards, and also as a way to break stalemates by knocking yourself out with that recoil damage, this card really shows itself some value. Also, I've used Sunshine Song a fair few times. It's a pretty good Pokepower, though you do sometimes have to go out of your way to actually make it work. The reverse holo copy is the one I use in my deck, since it's nice and it's a little bit less warped. This one in the binder is pretty warped, but it looks nice in a sleeve. Abomasnow here was actually pretty good in the Abomasnow spread strategies, both upon release, and then 2009 Worlds, someone top 32'd with Abomasnow Flygon, and in 2010 Worlds, someone top 32'd with Abomasnow Ampharos, otherwise known as Amphisnow. It is a very bulky spread attacker, which is pretty unusual compared to the EX era style of Rye Eggs, style of potential turn 2 spread. This Abomasnow is more focused on being a little bulky. Snowveil reduces damage done to your Pokemon in play by 20 if Abomasnow's active, including your bench, which makes this a really good counter to Kingdra, since Kingdra's attack, which usually does 60 and 20 to 1 on the bench, will now do 40 and 20 to 1 on the bench, and you can even heal that damage off. In the Abomasnow Bronzong deck, which I did take to a tournament recently, it is very fun to play. I will be building the deck with real cards soon. And Below Zero is pretty cool, doing 60 and potentially paralyzing the opponent if you evolved. It's sometimes useful, but mainly Snow plays the attack here, doing 20 to each of your opponent's Pokemon that's not grass or water on the bench. So you do 20 active and then 20 to a bunch of bench Pokemon. Unfortunately, not hitting grass Pokemon is very, very bad in 2010. One of the reasons why this deck is not very good, first of all, is Nidoqueen, which just heals spread damage. By the time Nidoqueen comes out, Abomasnow spread is definitely a lot worse. But compounding on that is the fact that there is stuff like Jumpluff that can dodge your spread damage. I appreciate them making a creative downside to this attack, but I also feel like maybe it could have just been water instead of water and grass in order for this card to actually be decent in 2010 as a counter to something like Jumpluff. So this Abomasnow is for my Amphisnow deck. I'll probably be moving it over to the 2008 Cities version when I finish building that. Do have Bronzong here with Cycler, a very cool card that's used in a lot of cubes. You put a card from your hand on top of your deck, then search your deck for 2 basic energy. It's also got an interesting attack that puts a number of damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon, equal to the amount of retreat cost they have, which is very cool, though very expensive. Could be potentially usable in a cube with reversal energy. I love this Bronzong because it has a fire resistance, which is a very rare resistance that's only seen on 2 separate Pokemon lines in the entire TCG history, being Bronzong line and Salamence. Otherwise, fire resistance is completely unseen. We have Cherim here, which is pretty cool. Cherim is a damage booster guy, and he increases the power of grass Pokemon's attacks and fire Pokemon's attacks by 10. This card actually did see some play back in the day. I have another one here that I got last weekend, so I have 2 copies now. And I have a regular copy as well, but not going to show that off. Scizor Cherim was a neat budget deck when it came out, kind of inverting the fact that all decks back in the day had to play Uxie in their deck, and Uxie was phenomenally expensive. Of course, this was before I was playing the game, I was just collecting back then, but Uxie, from what I've heard, has been listed at like $70 back in the day. So if your deck could get away, in the case of Scizor Cherim, you did not play any Uxie because you can't have any Poke Powers in play. You just played a bunch of Cherim to boost the damage of your Scizor, and then you just hit with Scizor. We do feature Drifblim here. I don't have anything to say about Drapion. He's cool, but I don't have anything to say about him. Drifblim, actually a really cool card. I also play it in my Scizor Cherim deck, which I will not be building with real cards for DP Cities, unfortunately. Just because it's a little linear. It's just a big guy hit deck, but this Drifblim has 2 free attacks. One allowing you to get cards back from the discard pile, and the other one searching the deck for 2 basic Pokemon and accelerating energy to it. Some people have been playing Retro GLC, which is GLC including all the cards from Expedition up until Call of Legends, with some bans, of course, and no level X's, no primes. And Drifblim is actually very good in Psychic Control. I played a Psychic Control build. Obviously, I was just playing casually with friends, but it felt pretty unstoppable having a free attack that gets back cards like POW Hand Extension that should just be banned from the format. Also, being able to get back resources like ER2, and being able to set up your board in the early game. Very, very good card. Dusknoir here is another very cool card. There's 2 Dusknoirs in the set, in the main set anyway. This guy is Spirit Pulse. Puts 10 damage on each of your opponent's Pokemon with energy between turns if Dusknoir is active. Dusknoir decks are all about spreading damage. Even though they have attacks that chunk the opponent pretty hard, they have like a general theme of spreading damage and taking advantage of that. And one of the ways you take advantage of that is Darkness Mist, which if they already have 20 damage on them, you do 80 instead of 60. Allowing you to do a lot of damage. This card is actually pretty good in 2010 Dusknoir Flygon, which is a rogue deck, but it's a pretty decent rogue deck that's been more discovered nowadays. And this guy plays an important role for knocking out things that are really bulky. Because of Double Close Energy, this deck's pretty easy to pay for in 2010, and you can take care of stuff like Torterra that otherwise would just be able to heal off all of your other attacks. Dusknoir cannot really be healed off because you're doing way more damage with Darkness Mist than they're going to be healing with Giga Drain. This missing slot that you see right here, the binder, is Gengar from Stormfront, which is one of the strongest cards of all time. Fainting Spell, just a ridiculous Poke power, potentially knocking out the opponent when they attack into Gengar for a knockout. Shatter Room, one of the best attacks in the entire Diamond and Pearl era, and Poltergeist is a potentially annoying attack that wouldn't be super good in these formats when it first came out, but it would be really good later on when you get things like Spiritomb and when you get cards like Vileplume later on than that permanently trainer lock the opponent, allowing Poltergeist to actually hit for a lot of damage. Gengar, very, very cool card. Very, very toxic card in some regards. And even when it came out, Gengar is very good in the DP Cities format. I don't know how much it was played historically, but in retrospect, it's one of the best decks, if not the best deck in this format of DP Cities. Next up we have Gyarados, which I have the reverse holo in the binder. Very nice copy to have. And I also want to show off, I have 2 more of the Theme Deck holo prints, and I've been getting them signed as I go to different regionals and stuff. So we have an Andrew Mahone signed Gyarados, since he has a Gyarados tattoo, and Tord Reklev, who is a player who is well known for playing Gyarados to top 32 at the European Challenge Cup in 2011. That's the only accomplishment that he is well known for, nothing else. So shout out to those 2 for signing my Gyarados. In this missing slot here on the next page, we have Machamp. Gyarados, of course, one of the strongest cards of the DP era as well. Tail Revenge, 30 times the number of Magikarp in your discard pile. It was not good upon release, but once Platinum debuted Broken Time Space, it took a while for the Gyarados deck to be discovered until like 2009 Nationals, which was one set later. But once people discovered, specifically Fabian Garner, I believe, won French Nationals with the deck, just a kind of a cracked 0 energy for 90 damage deck is pretty good. Machamp was the initially just kind of a speed deck in this format because of its takeout attack that was 40 and knocks out a Pokemon that is a basic. So if you can get a turn 1 Machamp, you just take an instant knockout. But also, it's got a little bit of long-term viability because of Hurricane Punch and Rage doing solid damage. I just live streamed a game yesterday when Machamp flipped 4 heads on Hurricane Punch and killed my Dialga G in a single hit. And if he gets 3 heads, the attack would be completely worthless. But 4 heads killed me, and it lost me the game. We also have Mamoswine here. Again, not all the cards in this set can shine as bright as the All-Stars. Mamoswine is a really cool card, though, because it's got a unique mechanic here with that Ramming Parade attack, which allows you to just reflip the attack as many times as you'd like, essentially. It says that you do 30 damage times the number of heads, you flip a coin until you get tails, 30 times the number of heads, and then if you don't like the result, you can choose to just reflip the coins, but then you gotta take 20 damage as a result of reflipping the coins. So you can just keep doing that until you get a result you like. Rapidash here, also pretty cool. This is the rare that I pulled from the Stormfront pack that I opened. Definitely not worth opening the pack, but it was my birthday. I was really hoping I'd get a cool rare holo or a playable card. Unfortunately, I got Rapidash, which is fine. Like, it's got 3 attributes, it's got the spirit there, but none of these attributes are particularly good. We already talked about Rose Raid, of course. Salamence is one of my favorite childhood cards. It's also one of the biggest what-if cards of all time. Love talking about this Salamence. Do I have an alternate non-holo over here? I definitely do. I've got the one for my childhood binder. There we go. Super beat-up card. Salamence is very cool because it has Battle Rush, which if your opponent has any Pokemon in play with 120 HP or less, you get to ignore all colorless energy and Salamance's attack costs, and Salamance's attacks are actually fantastic. The problem is that number 120 is really awkward. Specifically, in 2010, for context, we'll just look at the guys that are good in 2010. Gardevoir, 110. Garchomp C, 110. Gengar, 110. Luxray, 110. I'm sure there's other things that we could go on about, but 110 is, in like 2009, you also have like Infernape E4 level X, right? 110 is that magic number that this Pokebody really wishes it did. If it did 110, this Pokebody might be somewhat playable. You have a fantastic resistance, terrible weakness in 2010, but this would probably be good in 2009 if it just did 110 instead of 120. Unfortunately, that 120 number makes this card almost completely unplayable. So that is really unfortunate. It's a beautiful art. Salamence was my favorite Pokemon as a kid, but this card is just not the guy because of that unfortunate I'm not going to say it's like a mistranslation, it's not, but it's like just a miscalibration of what the ability should be to be good. Scissor here is pretty cool. I already talked a little bit about it, but Honeycomb Defender says if you have 6 or more damage counters on you, you take 40 less. Unfortunately, not that good in the format in DP Cities, just because there's a lot of Devo going around, a lot of effects and attacks that get around that Pokebody, but still kind of annoying to deal with. And then the main attack of the Scissor Cherrim deck is Pound Down. You do 40 plus 30 if you don't have any Poke Powers in play. So that can run like Chatot, and it can run Unknown R, which discards itself from the board and then draws a card, because that gets off your board. But you can't run Uxie, you can't run Claydol. Kind of got to run things like Drifblim to set up your board. And then Pound Down just hits for like 100 damage for 2 energy, which is really, really good. Problem being that the deck is inconsistent, and you just kind of have to raw draw your damage modifiers and just chain damage modifiers for knockouts. Skuntank here is pretty cool. Like I said, he's in the theme deck, just poisons when you evolve into him. Oh wait, no, it's not poison. It's they have to flip to attack. My bad. I read Evolutionary Gas and Poison Claws and I confused them. Evolutionary Gas, what a Poke Power, forces the opponent to flip if they want to attack when you evolve into Skuntank. And its attacks are just unfortunately kind of a little bit mediocre, but it is still a 3 attribute card with a resistance, a weakness. It's a Stormfront card. Straptor also pretty cool, not the best though. Steelix is pretty cool. We're still in the rares right now. Another page though. Steelix, I promise this will go faster as we get to the less interesting cards in the set. Steelix is great for that Outbreak power, which allows you to just spread a ton of damage on your opponent's board. So you can do things like, for each Metal Energy on Steelix, you get to spread. In the Magnezone deck in DP Cities, I'm not sure if it's the optimal way to run Magnezone. You could probably cut the Steelix line out and it wouldn't change a lot, but it's very cool, so I'm going to keep playing the Steelix in there. And what it does, it just lets you hit the opponent for a lot of damage by like spreading 20, and you can trap something with Palkia level X, which is a Gusting Poke Power. It's essentially Guzma, but it's your opponent gets to choose the guy that gets brought up, and then you get to choose the guy that's brought up, so it's double Gust for the Neo players out there. And then you have free retreat though because of Magnezone, so you just retreat into your Steelix and then you just start spreading if they have something trapped in the active. It lets you just kind of get around attacking directly into opponents and clearing their liabilities off their board. Instead, you can put up a bulky guy that's kind of annoying to deal with and soften up a bunch of targets for Magnezone to KO later. And also Iron Tail can just one-shot anything, which is kind of funny. So he's pretty cool. This Tangrowth is also cool, healing between turns and having 2 cool attacks. Unfortunately, just not the guy for 2010. There's 2 better Tangrowths that are in the 2010 format. Tyranitar, there's the non-holo print, and Vespiquen's also really cool. I feel like I've seen a deck at some point from Japan playing this in 2010, but it's not that good. It is like an interesting card, though. I have to get a card out because I forget exactly what it does, but if you're behind in prize cards, it lets you do 10 more damage for each grass Pokemon on your bench. These kind of abilities are usually traps just because it's a double kind of like qualifier, right? And there's not really grass Pokemon like Claydol in the format that are like seeing play in every deck, you know? So you kind of have to put things like Cherubs on your bench. That's what it's probably designed to be used with. And then you increase the power of B-Drain, so it's essentially a more powerful Giga Drain type effect. But the fact you have to be behind is kind of weird. Only having 100 HP is not bad, but it's also not that good. But it is really cool that we have B-Powder. Flip 2 coins. If both of them are heads, you burn, paralyze, and poison. That's a cool attack. Best Pokemon's got a little bit of everything going on, but it was just never, I don't think, very good. Particularly the fact that it can just get walled by spread decks that don't go behind or go ahead on prize cards. Badoo here is one of my favorite cards from the set. Yukamori artwork is really funny, and then also it's got a Poke Power, a Poke Body, and it's got the free Buddy Buddy attack. Technically, it's cheating a little because all babies in this era have that Baby Evolution Poke Power, where you evolve from this baby Pokemon, and the Pokemon that it evolves from gets some kind of benefit later on down the line. Get some kind of benefit that it can use. In this case, the like benefit isn't really worth it on the Roselia, so no one ran this Badoo, I don't think, even in their Roselia decks. But it is really, really cool that it has Poke Power, Poke Body, and an attack. This Bibarel's really funny. My friend, when he was younger, traded away his Rayquaza C-Level X for a Bibarel and something else, and it added up to have more HP than his Rayquaza C-Level X, so he thought it was a good trade, because he was getting 2 cards that had more HP total than Rayquaza. He got totally scammed. Also, I thought this Bibarel was unbeatable when I was younger. I didn't know how to read the ability right. It says, prevent all effects of attacks excluding damage done to Bibarel. I thought it meant including damage, so I just was like, oh dang, he's just like immune to all effects of attacks, like, and damage? Like, that's crazy. I don't know why I thought that would be balanced. And it came down to me and my opponent at the time having 2 Bibarels looking at each other, and you couldn't do anything because they're just invincible Bibarel. We have the 2 Dusclops here, 2 Dusknoirs, there's 2 Dusclops. Also, both of them are like somewhat viable in 2010, though I pretty much always these days play the Dark One-Eye Dusclops if I can help it. Because I mean, the other one has better artwork, to be honest, but this one's just got a 1 energy attack, which is good. This Electrode's interesting, where if it gets damaged by an attack and it's your active Pokemon, you spread 10 on your opponent's board, which is pretty cool, but because its attacks are kind of bad, you'd have to like design something around hitting and running into Electrode for it to actually be worth using. We have Machoke right here, which is one of my favorite artworks from the set. Just really goofy looking Machoke. Also very good in Machamp decks. There's the Haunter. This was my reverse holo from the Stormfront pack I opened. Unfortunately not the best Haunter that's played in decks because there's one with free retreat, but it is actually decent in DP cities because there's so much devolving. Having 10 extra HP is actually kind of relevant. The Farfetch, interesting. Don't really feel like talking about it. And Magneton is interesting, but this is the bad... Well, it's not bad Magneton, it's just less good Magneton because it's lightning type. The Metal Magneton, on the other hand, is very good because it has metal typing and it gets special metal energy reducing damage done to it, meaning it can actually tank. Again, shout out to the 3 attribute cards. We're not seeing as many of them at this point because we're starting to get to the uncommons, which started with Bibarel, but Miltank has 3 attacks, even if none of them are good. 3 attacks on a random Miltank is pretty cool. And also this Pichu is awesome. Getting to our next page, I have another alternate print of Sableye. The pre-release promo of this set was this Piloswine right here. I do not have that card. I don't know if I'll ever go out of my way for it, just because I don't care that much about the pre-release stamps back then, which are just a stamp on a regular card. And they're not that interesting. It's not like the Stormfront logo, it just has pre-release in gold stamp. The Sableye, though, is very interesting. Broke the game in 2011, but in 2009 and 2010, just a very strong card, allowing you to go first if you start it, which would be a disadvantage if not for its really good attacks, one of which finds you a supporter card for free from the deck and uses the effect of the supporter, which is free consistency. Pretty good. And then Overconfident does 50 damage, or 40 damage if you have more HP than the opponent. So when Crobat G would release in the following set, SP decks can use Crobat G to ping a Pokemon for 10 damage and lower its HP enough for Sableye to take an Overconfident knockout. With Special Darkness Energy, Overconfident does 50. So if you get a Pokemon to 50 HP with Crobat, it just dies to Overconfident. It's also a great way to counter Ghastly in the Diamond and Pearl Cities meta. Gengar, very good deck. Tyranitar can run Sableye and use it to kill Ghastly. So you might as well run this instead of Chatot because it has Darkness Synergy. Or you can run both. What else do we see on this page? I'm surprised I don't have the Reverse Finneon, honestly. That is pretty surprising. I really like the Scyther. He's cool. He's got Free Retreat and some decent attacks. I actually like him. I also like this Bidoof. He's also really cool. Shrooby's cool. We have a Combee, which I actually have the Reverse Holo for Combee in my little stack of cards that I'm sitting over here that are not in decks, but kind of in middle stasis right now. Combee, playable for its Honey item. Held items were still present during the Diamond and Pearl era. I believe they would be cut off after the set, so this was the last set, I believe, with the held items. And held items are essentially just like a Pokepower or Pokebody, but they can't be stopped by any effects. So Honey was actually really useful for getting back Pokemon from the discard, but it can't be stopped by anything like Power Spray or Power Lock or Trainer Lock that would stop other cards that get Pokemon back from the discard pile. It also means that if you play a Vespiquen deck, you get to play 4 Combee, which help you recover your Pokemon, which is really cool, and honestly why I really want to build a Vespiquen deck, even if it's going to be terrible. We have the Drifloon, which is cool. We'll come back to this Drifloon when we talk about the shiny Pokemon in the set, which are of note. We have this Ghastly, though. That's the other most important basic in the set. Ghastly is one of the strongest basic Pokemon that evolves of all time. Usually, you know, if you think strongest basic Pokemon, you're thinking like Reshiram Zekrom from 2011, stuff like that. You know, like, think like evolving Pokemon, though. How many of them have an attack as broken as Ghastly's Pitch Dark, which Trainer Locks the opponent? It also has Trick Gas, which is also good. It hits and runs. And you can hit and run to a Spiritomb in 2010, which also applies Trainer Lock. This is the best way to make sure your opponent's not doing anything very fast, and it's why I think that Gengar, one of the reasons why it's the best deck in Diamond Pearl Stormfront format, is because it can stop these faster decks like Kingdra from getting an overwhelming advantage. Even though these decks run a lot of items, if they can't play any of them, then what's the point of having them? Because you can't play any trainers going first, including item cards. So if you just get Ghastly out and then you Trainer Lock or Item Lock, as it would be now, your opponent on the second turn, then they just never get to use them. Moving on, we have some of the coolest cards here. We have Machop. He's funny. He's not very cool, though. I lied. I like him, but he's kind of weird looking. We have Magnemite, which another held item card, and the held item is really, really good here as well. It gives you -1 retreat for each of your Magnemite in play. So again, it's not a Pokebody, so it can't be shut off by things like Dialga-G level X, can't be taken advantage of by any effects. Held items are just nice little benefits on these little guys that are greatly appreciated. So, Magnemite, really cool. Love using him in my Magnezone deck. I need to get more Reverse Holo Magnemite. I only have one. That is a shame. We have Magikarp there, which is one of the most iconic cards of the set because of its use in Gyarados, and its art is just crazy. I have a nice playset of reverses of these. These probably aren't cheap anymore, unfortunately, because Kamiya arts are now at a premium. Glad I was able to get my reverse set before that. As you can see, still working on a lot of these in Reverse Holo. It's a slow grind. I have some of them that are in my decks, of course, like Snover, which I believe I have a full set of 4 now. If not 3, if I don't have 4, I have 3. And then Tangela. Tangela is actually the best Tangela for 2010, so that's cool. Most of these basics are the best in their respective formats a lot of times, besides like the Onyx, because of Double Colorless Energy coming out, makes it a little bit worse. Most of these basics are like the optimal basics in their line, even with multiple printings, just because all the cards in this set are really good. This is a broken set. Tons of playability. We go immediately to the trainer cards. Woo, crazy skip. I have a lot of these trainer cards in reverse. They're just in decks right now. So I've taken out some of the ones that I know I had, but I wasn't going to go chase down stuff like Energy Switch if I didn't know I had it. So we have Luxury Ball, we have Premier Ball, and we have Blower. I don't think I have the potion at all. For sure I don't have the potion. And then I don't know if I have energy switch, which I'll make it a note at some point to get the energy switch. Reverse holo, so I have all the reverse holo trainers and energy. Of note here is Luxury Ball, one of the best item cards of all time. Searching the deck for a Pokemon excluding level X and putting it into your hand. But you can't play Luxury Ball if you have any Luxury Ball in your discard pile. So it's almost like an Ace Spec trainer card. But later on, we get a card called Junk Arm in 2010, very, very late 2010, after the World Championships. You get Junk Arm, and you can reuse trainers from the discard pile, allowing you to reuse your Ace Spec, essentially. All of the Drawer, Blower, and Healer cards are really interesting. I believe they're the first of their kind, actually, of play 2 at once item cards, which are nowadays not that uncommon. Like we saw, in 2015, we saw Puzzle of Time, and we also saw Custom Catcher in 2018, and we saw things like the Mysterious Stone in Silver Times where you have to play all 4 at once, and Missing Clover you have to play all 4 at once. But I believe this is the first time they ever printed these play 2 at once trainer cards. In this case, Poke Blower, if you play 2 at once, you get a Gust effect, like Pokemon Catcher, with no coin flip. And if you play 1, you flip a coin of heads, do 10 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon, which is actually a pretty good effect in Donk decks. Donk decks will a lot of times play Poke Blower, aiming to get that first effect off, with Shuppet Donk in 2010, trying to get that first effect off so that you can apply more damage for a knockout. The Gust effect can also be really good. Gusting effect, I play this card in my Gyarados and my Donphan decks for the Gusting effect, though the damage boosting effect does come up. Poke Drawer Plus, if you play 1, draw 1 card. If you play 2, search your deck for any 2 cards. This card seems extremely broken, and in 2009 it was actually very good in slower decks. They would play this essentially to make their deck into 56 cards. And then you have just these 4 consistency pieces in there, which is pretty cool. But with a lot of Trainer Lock existing in 2010, this card does not see nearly as much play as you might think. Poke Healer Plus is also pretty good in bulky decks. It says if you play 1, heal 1 damage counter and a special condition from your active, which is already pretty good. Healing 10 and a special condition. Special conditions are very good back then, so that's relevant. And if you play 2, heal 80 in all special conditions, allowing you to just get almost like a fully healed Pokemon. This would be played in Regigigas decks. At least in the modern era, people play this in their Regigigas strategies. And back in the day, I believe there was some Gardevoir players from Canada that played this 2010 Worlds. From what I remember hearing, there was a Canadian Gardevoir that played Poke Healer. Some interesting trainer cards in the set that are not these play 2 at once. We have a couple of reprints in here, like Energy Switch, Premier Ball, and Potion. We have Great Ball, which is now modified. Great Ball during the EX era said search your deck for a basic Pokemon except Pokemon EX and put it onto your bench. Great Ball in this set just says search your deck for a basic Pokemon. There are no Pokemon EX, so they took away the stipulation, which does technically make it a better card, but Great Ball would see almost no play during its lifespan in competitively successful decks because you would just play a supporter card to get your basic Pokemon like Roseanne's Research or Pokemon Collector. So Great Ball is pretty bad. Energy Link is interesting. It's a tool card that relies on having 2 of them in play. And if you have 2 Energy Link attached to 2 different Pokemon, you can move energy cards between them, which is really cool. I thought of building a deck around Energy Link with Regigigas in this format because there's no other tool cards besides Unknown G that are really worth playing in the Diamond and Pearl Cities format, Diamond and Pearl Stormfront. But ultimately, I just came to the conclusion that you just cut Energy Link and play better cards instead. Energy Link, really cool idea, being able to use 2 tool cards to move energy between Pokemon. Ultimately, a failure would probably actually be good nowadays. Nowadays, I could see this card powering up, Menace Attackers, something like an Iron Hands EX getting powered up out of nowhere from a Pokemon that charges energy onto itself would be something interesting to see. Marley's Request, aka Mickey's Request, says get 2 and any different trainer cards, supporter cards, or stadium cards from your discard pile, and then you put them into your hand, and your opponent gets to choose which one to give you. So you could, for instance, be like, hey, you're giving me back my Luxury Ball, so I get to play my Ace Spec again, or you're giving me back Poke Blower, and you can probably guess that I'm going to Gust you with Poke Blower Plus, because I'm going to get 1 back and have 2 in hand. This card was unfortunately not very good, but it was played in Porygon Z decks because they have 2 copies of Technical Machine in their deck. And you can guaranteed get back a technical machine, which is otherwise not recoverable, and the entire deck is based around doing damage based on the number of technical machines you have attached to your active Pokemon. So getting back damage recovery, pretty good. And then also in that deck, you can do interesting things with Porygon Z, like run 1 copy of Switch and 1 copy of Warp Point or Warp Energy to guarantee yourself like a switching effect. If you can run 2 cards that essentially have a similar utility, you can guaranteed get one of them back, even though you're giving the opponent the option of what to choose. Now, if we start off from Warp Energy, which is our good friend, this, in fact, very good card. I should speak on the fact that reprinting Warp Energy is one of the best special energy in the entire Diamond and Pearl era. The fact that they reprinted this is huge. Very, very good card. One of the best in the set, honestly. Then we get onto our level X's, which we have Dusknoir, one of my favorite cards of all time, Heatran, Machamp, Raichu, and Regigigas, which is another one of my favorite cards of all time. We're going to put Regigigas right there, sure. Dusknoir is really cool. He's only got 1 attribute on him, but of course, remember, the other Dusknoirs that he evolves from has like 3 attacks, or 2 attacks and a Pokepower, or 1 Pokebody and an attack. Ectoplasm says when you knock out Dusknoir level X, you can choose to put Dusknoir level X into play as a Stadium card. The rest of the Pokemon line goes into the discard pile, but Dusknoir level X will go into play as a Stadium card, and it spreads 10 on all your opponent's Pokemon while it's in play. Which is just so absurd. Like, the fact that they did this, I guess I said that they didn't really experiment with new mechanics in this set, and I guess I was wrong when I think about it, because you have opponent's choice supporter cards. Well, I guess that was already a thing with Rival and DP base. But you have play 2 at once, item cards. You have tool cards that require 2 of them being in play to do anything. And then now you have Pokemon that turn into Stadium cards. Truly an enigma of a format at the time. Dusknoir level X was pretty decent. Ross Cawthon back in the day was playing Dusknoir level X to city challenges. Unfortunately, Dusknoir is one of those cards that would fall off pretty hard. Never really get the results it deserved. It did top 32 2009 Worlds as Dusknoir Gengar, but its attacks are just kind of expensive. It's very, very slow, and the effect of Ectoplasm only activates if your opponent knocks you out with damage from an attack, so they can use something like Crobat G to get around it, though you are potentially letting a Dusknoir snipe you for 130 damage on the turn prior, since the Dusknoir from Stormfront that we talked about earlier does damage based on the damage counters on it to one of your opponent's Pokemon. However, it's just a little awkward to use, so it never really got the spotlight at the highest level of events that it really deserved. It was always decent in this early DP Cities meta, but never really caught on for World Championships and Worlds and National Championships. Very cool card, though. Also worth mentioning that Flygon takes advantage of the fact you're putting a Stadium card into play, even though it's not an actual Stadium card. So we'll leave that there until we turn the page. Regigigas we'll talk about, sure, even though he's technically last. Regigigas is interesting because, actually this is the promo card. Oops, 1 second. There we go. We have Regigigas level X stepping on you in this one. He has Sacrifice, which says you can knock out one of your Pokemon in play, and if you do, you get to attach 2 basic energy from your discard pile to Regigigas, and then you get to heal 80 damage from Regigigas. So Regigigas level X decks are like these tank and heal decks, and you can do these plays where even though the Giga Blaster attack says you cannot use it 2 turns in a row, you can retreat Regigigas for 4 energy cards and then accelerate 2 of those energy back to Regigigas and potentially attack with Giga Blaster on the same turn just by retreating, and then you kill the Pokemon that you put in the active spot. Sacrifice always very useful for clearing liabilities. The way that the Regigigas decks play is by playing down lots of liabilities like Mesprit and Uxie, these Pokemon that have low HP but have powerful effects that play down onto the board, and then you get to use that effect and then trash the Pokemon now that's not worth anything. Once it's on your board, it's kind of useless, so just kill it with Regigigas to heal damage. Regigigas decks are like tank and heal decks, but unfortunately it's typing, and the fact that it's 150 HP colorless level X leaves it vulnerable to things like Flygon, which snipes 150 to Pokemon level X. In 2009, that completely held Regigigas back after it was really good in the Diamond Pearl Platinum meta. It was like a solid deck doing well at state tournaments. Once Flygon comes out, once Toxicroak comes out, which is a really good fighting SP attacker, Didn't really see the success that it could have had, but it did top 32 2010 US Nats, and it did top 32 2010 Worlds, or I think it might have even top 16 2010 Worlds, I believe. And that's all due to cards like Double Colorless Energy, as well as new supporter cards like Pokemon Collector that increase the viability of setting up a Regigigas strategy. Well, it's still not a tier 1 deck. It's very cool. One of the coolest decks ever. It does also have an alternate art print that came in the tins from that year. The holiday tins, I believe, that came out for Christmas, being that the set released in November. And I like the alternate art even better than regular art because he is dabbing. This is Dab Gigas and this is Step on Me Gigas. Those are going to be their names. We have Heatran Level X, which also has a promo card. Oh wait, no. I have this swapped around. Here's Heatran. Here's the promo card on the left. I like the regular Heatran better, but I also am attached to the promo card because it was pretty cool. They did this weird thing during the Diamond and Pearl era, though, where there's actually no other Heatran in this set. Heatran was released in Stormfront, or in Legends Awakened, sorry, and it was actually introduced in Legends Awakened. This is the only DP set to not introduce new Pokemon, and they just gave it a level X one set later. So they did that a lot during DP. The first Porygon Z is in Great Encounters, but we don't get his level X until Majestic Dawn. There's no Porygon Z in Majestic Dawn besides a level X. Same with Garchomp. Majestic Dawn, there's no Garchomp. There hasn't been a Garchomp in 3 sets. There is a Garchomp level X. Despite this being the set with 2 Magnezones, you'd think there'd be Magnezone level X in this set. No, Magnezone level X was in Legends Awakened, which is a set that had no other Magnezones in it. In fact, Magnezone hadn't been printed in 5 sets since Diamond and Pearl base when the level X came out. I really don't understand why they couldn't have just like swapped Heatran with Magnezone to give the set a lot more thematic likeness. It would make a lot of sense. Heatran does look like a Stormfront card though, and the fact that it's got a Poke Body and a Poke Power and nothing else on the level X. Both these effects are just really niche, not that good unfortunately. Mainly because level X's have to be in the active spot to level up, and this guy's got 4 retreat and his attacks on the base Heatran suck. So, not very good. Machamp level X is really cool because of that no guard Pokebody, imitating the ability from the video games, which means attacks both used by Machamp and used against Machamp never miss. That's how the video games go. In the trading card game, it makes all attacks that Machamp uses and all attacks that hit Machamp increased by 60 damage. So you essentially turn your Machamp into a nuclear bomb. Or maybe a glass cannon is the best way to put it, since it's going to get knocked out in return most likely. This was really good because of Unknown G, which exists in these formats, and Unknown G prevents the effects of Takeout. Takeout is an attack that turns into an effect. Really weird thing here. It does 40 damage, but if you attack into a basic Pokemon, or a Pokemon that's not evolved, sorry, like Regigigas level X here, not evolved, it just instantly knocks it out instead of doing any damage. But because it turns into an effective attack, the damage actually dissipates when it hits a basic. But if you have a Pokemon like Unknown G attached to Regigigas level X here, it just, Takeout will do nothing. It just turns into an effect and then the effect bounces because Unknown G prevents effects of attacks. However, Machamp players who are smart can level up their Machamp and then just use its Hurricane Punch attack on the Machamp, which costs 2 energy, and just nuke something like a Regigigas out of orbit. Which unfortunately takes away some of the counterplay for these basic decks, but also makes Machamp a more interesting card, because you have this possibility. It's also a stage 2 with a plus 40 weakness, so if you get hit by a Psychic Pokemon with no guard, you're taking plus 100 damage from attack, which is crazy. All the other level X in the set have times 2 weakness. Machamp has plus 40. Strong-Willed, also an interesting attack, does 20, and you flip a coin of heads, Machamp actually survives all attacks that it gets knocked out from next turn and lives with 10 HP, which is really wild. Or it has to be damaged from an attack, so if it gets knocked out by an effect, it actually goes down, but still, what a weird attack. I have been cheesed by it once before. It's not the worst attack in the world. So there are all the level X's as well as their promo counterparts. I do also have a lot of Japanese copies of these level X's because they're my favorite. Actually, we didn't talk about Raichu. Oops, I forgot. Raichu is also very cool. It's a Stormfront card, of course it is. Link Lightning, when you level up Raichu, you get to use, or if you level up Raichu and then you use the Voltage Shoot attack, which is on this level X, you get to use another attack during the same turn, including the double Voltage Shoot. So I read the ruling on it. You can use, it says use another attack, you can use Voltage Shoot again. This is really cool because Link Lightning reads like a Poke Power, and it's a effect that goes when you play it down into play. However, if it was a Poke Power, it'd be completely unplayable because something like a Power Spray would stop it from ever activating. Now, I'm not saying Raichu level X is good or anything, it's definitely not a meta card, but the fact you can attack twice does allow you to cheese some stuff. Free Retreat's cool, and there's a Raichu from Mysterious Treasures that lets you accelerate 2 energy from your deck to one of your Raichu for free, or one of your bench Pokemon, so you can just charge up this guy on the bench, bring it up, level up, and use Voltage Shoot plus another attack, potentially another Voltage Shoot. Because Voltage Shoot is a discard 2 lightning energy from your hand instead of from Raichu, it's pretty easy to use a second attack. Such as this Raichu in the set, you can use its Slice attack for free, or you can use Burst Ball, which discards 3 energy from any of your Pokemon in play, which is really cool. Raichu, very cool card. I have a deck built around in 2010, even if it's not good in any of the formats it's in. It's a very pretty card, and it's very cool. Now we're on the last page, which kind of hits a dead end. We do have some extra cards. These are all the cards I got from my Platinum Booster Pack, besides the Reverse Hollow Haunter and then the Rapidash Rare. Those are obviously in the binder. We saw them already. And we have the pre-release sleeve here. Back in the day, sleeves were given out at pre-release. You get a full set of 65, and they feature silhouettes of the Pokemon from the set. So this set, of course, being Dusknoir, because this is the Dusknoir set. You might be forgiven for thinking this is the Regigigas or the Magnezone set. There's no Magnezone level X, and Regigigas does not have a regular Regigigas in the set. I forgot to mention that. Oh wait, actually, yes there is. Yes, there's a regular Regigigas. My bad. It's a bad one, but it's pretty. This set also has 3 secret rares, as well as 3 SH subsets. So this is the first set to introduce the SH subset, which would continue on during the Platinum era for the entirety of the Platinum era. So weird little dividing line. They didn't really do things as neatly during Diamond and Pearl and Platinum as they do nowadays. So even though Platinum is not the first set of a new era, it introduces a new style of rarity in this case, being the SH subset. These were shiny alternate prints of Pokemon. Because they're cards from Stormfront, they also feature 3 attributes. And in some cases, they are the optimal print of a card to play. So this Duskull, for instance, is the best Duskull for some Dusknoir decks in 2010. Dusknoir decks, if they do not play their Dusclops, they're going to play this Duskull. If they do play Dusclops, there's a Duskull that has Reaper Cloth that's much better because you can just instantly evolve. But if you're not playing a Duskull, this is the optimal Dusclops to play, which does create some pricing issues. It's also got 3 attacks. Oh, I love Stormfront so much. One of the interesting things to point out, we'll use this Drifblim for example, is that these shiny Pokemon are illustrated by artists that illustrated one of the regular Pokemon in the set. So there is another Duskull illustrated by Koki Saito in the set. There's, of course, this Drifloon, which I believe is Kusajima, is it? No, it's Nishida who did both of these Drifloons. And there's also a Voltorb, which is done by Kent Kanetsuna, I believe, in the set. So I didn't double check the Voltorb, because the Voltorb was actually the last card I needed for the set that I got in today. That I ordered specifically once I had the Raichu. I thought it was like, well, I only have 1 card left. Might as well. Very expensive card, but very cool shiny. Glad to have it. My favorite of these is Duskull just because it's playable, but Drifloon is also quite cool because Drifloon has free retreat cost if you do not have any tool cards attached to Drifloon. It actually has a bad Pokebody. It says if you have a tool card attached to Drifloon, its retreat cost becomes 2 more, which is really weird. But essentially, don't play a tool card on Drifloon. It actually works like the video games. Video games also have Unburden. If you use your item, you get +2 speed. And this is kind of like a reverse version of that, where if you have an item attached to Drifloon, you get -2 retreat cost, or +2 retreat cost, which is bad. We don't like that. But this is the optimal Drifblim because it has free retreat, and none of the other Drifloons do. Though it's not optimal for Retro GLC, since there's a Drifloon with a free attack that gets back cards, so keep that in mind. I love the SH reprints. I'll never own all of them because I'm missing some of the more valuable ones like the Shinx from Arceus, but I have a lot of them. Also my Lodic from Supreme Victors, good God. But I have a lot of these SH reprints, and I think they're a fun rarity. they're neat because they don't look that different from actual cards. They look like any random reverse holo from one of these sets, except for they're shiny. Which gave me this idea a long time ago that I thought, wouldn't it be awesome if I found one of these SH reprints in bulk? Because they look like a regular card. They look like a regular reverse holo. There's nothing special about these cards. In Japan, I think they have like a foiling on them or something, but over here they're just reverse holo. What if I found one of these shinies in a bulk box? And last year, I found a shiny Lotad from Platinum in a bulk box. So my dream had come true. That was my ultimate bulking goal, was to find a real-life shiny Pokemon in a bulk box. A real Pokemon that doesn't stand out until you just know, if you're from that era, like you're like, yes, this is a shiny Pokemon, this is a special card, because they don't really look that different, right? That's what makes them special, in my opinion, even if they are kind of muted. There are 3 cards I'm technically missing from the set. Those of you who are astute would know that this has a secret rare Charmander, a secret rare Charmeleon, and a secret rare Charizard. For obvious reasons, I will not be ever owning those. I also don't really care about those cards. They are interesting, though, in that they're the first in a line of reprints that we started getting during the Platinum era. These would come in Stormfront, would start the trend, and then we'd see them also in Platinum, in Rising Rivals, and in Supreme Victors, none in Arceus, which would end the trend. Arceus would be the last set with the shiny Pokemon in it, though, the Shining reprints. And they would mainly be just important cards from back in the day. So this set had the base set Charizard line, which is obviously very iconic. The Platinum set has the Haymaker trio, which I actually built a full deck out of. Why don't we get the deck over here? You can just show off what these reprints look like, I suppose. I have a lot of these reprints just from being here a long time. I used to have the Rising Rivals Flying Pikachu, however I did get rid of that. It's very expensive. Here, for instance, the Haymaker reprints. So they're printed in a Diamond and Pearl style, but they have the same attacks and stats as the base set prints, which actually makes some of these worse than their Diamond and Pearl prints, because something like the Electabuzz has a ×2 fighting weakness compared to a +20 weakness, which would be what it would have during Diamond and Pearl. But the Scyther was actually optimal for Scissor Prime decks, because it has a free retreat cost and 70 HP. So these very playable Pokemon from Platinum era get to live on as reprints from the Platinum, or from base set era get to live on as reprints from Platinum base set. Rising Rivals would have the Flying Pikachu and the Surfing Pikachu and regular Pikachu. I've had in my life the Flying Pikachu at one point, and I had the regular Pikachu at one point, but I don't like them as much. They're redraws of the cards. The Charmander line is also a redraw done by Arita, and then they had the Pikachu cards be redraws, or the regular Pikachu, sorry, be a redraw by Arita. The Flying and Surfing are just reused arts. They look better. The redraw of the Pikachu, just, I got it for like $7 back in the day. I thought it was cool, but I don't really regret selling it, other than the fact that I just like Diamond and Pearl era cards, because it's just kind of bland as a secret rare. And then I can actually show off the Supreme Victors ones, because I have them in my binder. We're going to close our Stormfront binder for the remainder of the video. Going into my main binder here, we have some more of the Shining Pokemon, which you see would continue in Platinum, as well as that Lotad I talked about bulking out. One of my proudest ever cards to... the proudest card I was ever to find in bulk. I don't know what I'm saying. It's been an hour of me talking and my voice is going out. I've never been happier finding a card in bulk than finding that Lotad. It's not the most valuable card I've found in bulk, but it is the coolest by far. And then we have some of our other cards from Rising Rivals and Platinum. And you see, we have the 3 Legendary Bird reprints right here, which would come in Supreme Victors. I do have them in Japanese. They were significantly cheaper in Japanese because they're much, much easier to get. They're a little beat up, but they're still quite pretty. In Japan, they have, and all of their like secret rare-esque cards have like this light foiling over them. It's not as cool as our prints, which... like, these Rotoms look way cooler in English with, like, the Shatter Foil Hollow. These would be in Rising Rivals. These would be in Supreme Victors. I have the whole Rotom subset, though. Again, I love DP cards, so I'm going to continue getting stuff as I go. Maybe one day I'll own these in English. For now, I only own one, which is... if I can go find it. There we are. The one that I own is the Moltres. I had the Zapdos at one point. My friend has it now. It's too expensive probably to get back, but the Moltres is cool. I think these do better as hollows than, or as like these weird reverse hollows with the Rotom than they do as the shiny, like little sparkle print from Japan, but that's just me. I just really like Cosmos Hollow. So that's just my main binder, showing off a little bit of some more lore. And that's been the video about Stormfront. One of the coolest sets, and definitely my favorite set of all time, featuring all sorts of iconic and playable cards that would define the Diamond and Pearl era and the Platinum era going there forward, which would be following Stormfront. Featuring some of the most unique effects of all time, such as this Tyranitar, which we didn't even talk about, the fact that it accelerates energy from the discard when your opponent uses a Pokepower. Oh my goodness, that's so cool. There's so much to like about the set, so many cool cards, so much better artwork than the rest of the Diamond and Pearl era up to this point, and so much text on these cards that you can just build a cube with like all of the cards that aren't even good in decks. It is the greatest Pokemon set of all time, and that is why, in a short 1 hour and 8 minutes,